Hey guys, it's Alice again. So today I am joining you for the very first Freelance Friday video. If you didn't catch last week's update, I'm actually doing a new little series on this channel called Freelance Fridays, and I'm basically covering a bunch of topics to do with freelance work, whether it be invoicing, speaking to clients, finding clients, making money, anything I can think of and anything you guys request, I'm going to cover it. So if you aren't already subscribed, please make sure you do. We're going to do this for as long as I have a topic to talk about, so I hope you're going to enjoy it, and let's get straight into it. So for this week's, as you can tell from the title, is all about invoicing. I'm going to talk you through a pretty boring topic, but something that you don't get taught about in schools. I wish you did. So I actually have compiled a list of the things that I kind of go through and the things I've learned when invoicing clients. Now I actually have put this list onto my blog, which I will leave in the top line of the description. So if you want to recap on anything I've said, or if you want a little bit more of a detailed version, go over to my blog and you'll be able to copy that over there and read it whenever you want. I'm also offering a free download of an invoice template. So I've made up a template which you can easily download to your computer. You can use Google Documents to edit it and make it your own, you know? So you've got your own invoice template and you're all set up. Hopefully once you've listened and read all the information I have for you, you're a little bit clearer in the world of invoicing, because to be honest, I'm still learning. If you have anything to tell me that I've missed that you think I might find useful, please do let me know. We're all about sharing ideas and information on this channel. So let's go. Oh, I'm already out of breath. So the general time when you should submit an invoice is when you have already completed the work. So for example, if let's say someone hired me to cover their event with social media, to post an Instagram story or an Instagram photo, the time that I would send the invoice is once I have done that on that evening. I would probably get home and then send the invoice. And the usual kind of payment terms for invoices are either 30 days, 60 days or 90 days. Generally it is usually around 30 days. That's the most common that I have come across. So 30 days from completing that work, you should be paid for it. Should be. Fingers crossed, but I'm hoping that by following these steps we can avoid late payments as much as possible. So the main thing to include in the invoice is all of your information. Every single thing that that person paying you possibly needs to, you know, pay you without it being complicated. So that includes your name, email address, house address, like your account number, sort code you need to put on there. If you're getting paid via PayPal, you need your PayPal address. If you're getting paid by check, you need your actual home address. You need to put your name on there as it appears on your bank account. There's just a whole list of things you need to include. This will all be in the blog post, but some companies actually do ask for an IBAN code, IBAN. Yes, that's the thing. I've just checked my notes. Or a BIC number, and that only applies for like overseas transactions. So for example, if you're working for someone in Canada and they're trying to transfer you funds into your bank account, they'll need an extra bit of information. Now you don't always need those numbers, but if you do, and if someone asks you about them, you can very easily find them on your online banking system. In mine, it's just in like the more account information drop down, and then the two numbers are there. So that is something I've definitely learnt the hard way, because overseas accounts need that extra bit of information, so definitely bear that in mind. Other things to list is like a breakdown of the work you've done. So if I've done a paid Instagram post or a paid Instagram story, I would list those and then list next to them the cost per each one. Sometimes it's an overall cost, so put that on the end and then add a total final sum, everything added up together in the bottom in a bigger bit of writing, so your client can see how much it is that you're owed. Also include an invoice number just for your own records so you can keep track of which one's which, and also make sure you put a due date on it. So for example, if I sent mine today on the 7th of September, I would put the 7th of October. I forgot which order the months were in then. I'd put the 7th of October. I usually check on my calendar to make sure that the 7th of October is actually a weekday date. If not, I kind of arrange it or move it backwards or forwards a couple of days to make sure that when it's due is like an office day, so the person doesn't have an excuse to not pay it on time. Something that you need to do before you even consider creating and sending an invoice is to ask your client whether they need a purchase order number, or PO for short. Generally people ask for a PO rather than like the full name, so just make sure you understand the terms. And a purchase order number is basically that company's way of filing you into their system. And in these cases, companies that do use purchase orders need to have that number on your invoice, otherwise they can't process it. For example, in the past, I have sent over my complete invoice with all the information on it that I thought I needed, my address, bank account, all that kind of stuff, and then a few days later when my client actually looked at that invoice, they told me that they needed a purchase order on it, which meant that I had to go back to my invoice template, add the purchase order and resubmit the invoice with a later date. So those couple of days make a big difference. It meant that I had to push back my due date and it just delayed the payment, and it was just a whole lot of hassle that didn't need to happen. I definitely learned it the hard way, so please make sure if you are starting with a new client to ask whether they need a purchase order. And generally for every job you do, if you have to charge them and send them another invoice, you'll need another purchase order, so you need to ask them every single time. So when you are actually creating your invoice, you need to also include the information of the person you are actually charging. So you need their name, their contact email, maybe phone number in some cases, and also their address. This makes it clear who it is that owes you the money, so if there were a chance that you needed to take this further and chase it up, you have a record of who you sent it to in the first place. Generally, it is a lot better to direct it directly to the person in charge of finance. Sometimes that is harder than it seems, because there are a lot of different departments, and I know I've had the trouble of invoices getting lost. So if you can direct it directly to the finance department or to that person who is in charge of paying it, it kind of reduces the chance of your invoice getting lost amongst emails and kind of getting put to the bottom of the pile, because again, you're going to slow things up and it's just going to be frustrating for everyone. So if you can, get in touch with like the top dog so it goes through as few hands as possible and hopefully gets to the right place faster. Now, invoicing documents are not attractive. They're not a document that's made to be visually appealing at all. They are literally serving a purpose. It's basically a bit of a receipt for the work that you've done. So don't be too fussy about the design and don't go overboard. Be clear and concise. So of course it's nice to have a little bit of branding, so if you want to put your logo in the top corner or add like a little bit of a watermark or a little bit of design on the bottom, whatever, just so you can distinguish it from yours, definitely go ahead. But the actual general body information of text needs to be as simple and as clear as possible. So make sure your address is on one side and all your information, their address is on the other side and all the information, and each kind of product or service and cost is listed separately so that there's no chance of confusion. Or at least we hope so. I feel like there's always something that's missed, but if you can keep it clear and concise, generally the person who's paying the invoice should be able to work it out just like that. It'll be like second nature. They see them every single day, so they don't really care whether your invoice is fancy or not. As long as it looks professional and clear and neat, you'll be good. Kind of going against everything that I've just said, if you aren't in the position to send invoices just yet, if you don't really do enough work freelance to need to, then there is another system that I use that is amazing for like getting money from people, and it's paypal.me. So I feel like everyone knows of PayPal. I feel like most people have a PayPal account as long as you're over 16 or 18, I think it is. And it's basically a little link that you can set up with your own name on the end or your business name, and people can pay through that link. And you can customize the link so it shows a set number. So if I wanted someone to pay me £20, I would put /20 on the end of my link and it would automatically ask the client to pay me £20. People can pay via their PayPal account through that link. People can pay via debit or credit card. It's kind of like a general thing for people to pay you. Obviously, that does mean that you still need to account for that money going into your business account or whatever. You need to tell the taxman that you're getting paid through PayPal rather than your actual bank account, because they will check. But that is just a whole quicker and easier way. I tend to use that method when I'm doing like commission work, because generally I'm working one-on-one with another individual rather than business to business. So I find it a lot simpler and a lot easier just to send someone a link that they pay through, because it's a whole lot less confusing than looking at an invoice. So another system that I've actually recently started using is QuickBooks, and this is like an online accounting and invoicing system. So this also helps me out with my tax returns and filing things for the taxman, which I can go into in another video if you want me to. But QuickBooks also is now where I kind of supply my invoices and send them from. So Basically, they have their own template. It's super simple. You put in all the information you need and they will email your client on your behalf and send them an invoice. And you can actually track, you can see when the invoice has been viewed, you can chase it up if it's late, you can mark it as paid, and it's like a visual record of seeing when and where and who all the money is coming from. I find this so much easier. I used to track it all in my calendar, which worked perfectly fine for me when I didn't have that many coming through. But now I have like a few different jobs from a few different areas. It's becoming a little bit tricky to keep on top of it. QuickBooks is like a couple of pounds a month, but to be honest, for the money it saves me, I think it's amazing. I've had it for about a month and a half now, and I just haven't looked back. So I'm enjoying it so far. Definitely recommend QuickBooks if you haven't tried it before. But if, like I said, you aren't in the market for something like that, you can use your own calendar. What I'd recommend is colour coding it. So in blue, I would mark down when the invoice is due and try and keep track of it that way. You do have to be quite proactive doing that, but as long as you're organised, it should be okay. So in terms of like calendars and marking it down, you've got to remember to remind people to pay you your invoice. I was quite naive at the beginning and I used to think that people would just remember to pay me. Sometimes, I will admit, people pay early or on time and it's amazing. It always shocks me, it kind of blows my mind, but a lot of the times people do forget. It's bound to happen. They have a lot of money going in and out, they're gonna forget, so they don't mind a friendly reminder. So in general, I will send a reminder a week before, just saying, hi there, just wanted to send this friendly reminder over to let you know that the attached invoice is due on this date. And I will put the date, and then I'd probably say prompt payment would be greatly appreciated. It's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you, Alice. So something simple like that, and then I would attach the invoice and send it back to them. And generally they'll reply and say, thank you so much for reminding me, whatever. If by some chance they haven't replied yet, I then usually message them the day before the due date, and then if it gets to the day after the due date and I still haven't been paid, that's when I talk about late fees. So late fees are something that I didn't actually know about until one of my lecturers at university told me. So there is actually a law for this. Let me just read it. It is called the Late Payment of Commercial Debts Regulations 2003, and that is all linked in the blog if you want to read it. But basically it means that you can charge either £40, £70 or £100 depending on how much your invoice is worth for being late. So if you put those little terms in the bottom of your invoice to say basically, look, if you're going to pay me late, this might happen, it might encourage your client to pay on time. So I definitely have had to go through this thing before. I have generally just said, look, you're now a week overdue. I usually give them a bit of leeway, you know, I'm not totally cruel. And if it's like a week to 2 weeks overdue, I'll message them and be like, look, according to the Late Payments Act, I am going to have to charge you a late payment fee of £40. This is due to XYZ, you've not paid it, basically. And generally, that kind of gives them the kick up the bum to pay you on time. I've found that that kind of just happens because obviously they don't want to spend more money. Most of the time, you don't actually get that late payment fee because, now here's the catch, hopefully this makes sense. Because if you do a late payment fee, you're going to have to reissue the invoice. So if I have issued an invoice for £100 and I've charged them £40 for being late, I'd have to start again an invoice for £140, which takes me right back to the beginning of the process and adds another 30 days on to the payment terms. So you kind of have to weigh up the pros and cons. In general, I have never actually got a late payment fee. I don't really chase it up too much, but I do use it as a little bit of like a nudge to say like, look, if you don't pay me, you're gonna have to pay more. And finally, I feel like I've been babbling on for so long, I will put all this into writing on my blog. Automation saves a lot of time, so things like QuickBooks, things like PayPal.me, and there's actually a site called Chaser. These are all things that help kind of make the boring admin tasks a little bit easier, so that's something I've definitely got into in the past few months. Sorry guys, my battery died, but yeah, QuickBooks helps me keep track of my tax things and also lets me visually see the amount of invoices I'm waiting to be paid, the amount that have been paid, the ones that are overdue, and I can actually like nudge my clients to remind them. And things like Chaser are actually plugins that you can add to QuickBooks that will do that all for you. Now, I did look into Chaser and unfortunately it is a little bit pricey for me right now, but if you're a bigger business and you're looking into a way of automation, I've heard really good things about like systems like that. And PayPal.me obviously takes out the hassle of invoicing altogether, and you can just take business payments for a small fee, and PayPal kind of cover it all for you, which I really, really like. I absolutely love PayPal. So I think that's about it. If I have missed anything, be sure to go over to my blog post. Let me know what you think of this first Freelance Friday video. I've actually really enjoyed kind of putting all this together. I feel quite good about sharing the knowledge, you know, and again, I'm not an expert. If you have anything to add, please do in the comments below. Recommend anything that you've tried. Let's start a conversation, and don't forget to go and download the free invoice template from my website. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, you know what to do. Thumbs up, subscribe for the next one, and I'll see you next week for another Freelance Friday. Bye!